Hello and welcome to another Media Studies lesson. So this is lesson number 2 in our introductory topic called An Introduction to the Media. So all of our lessons that I'm delivering here are ones that I would deliver in a classroom. So if I was in a classroom with a class full of students in front of me, they would have the time it takes me to complete the register to answer these questions on their mini whiteboards. If you need to pause the video at any point to answer questions or complete tasks, please do so. So if you followed us from lesson 1, you should already be able to answer these questions. So in a moment, when I say go and not before, you're going to answer these questions on your mini whiteboard. Ready? Go. Okay, let's see if you got the right answers then. Define the term print media. Hopefully you got something along the lines of physical printed products, things like newspapers, magazines, and adverts. Define the term broadcast media. So that's media that is sent to audiences through things like television and radio. Define the term OS&P. Well, that stands for online, social, and participatory media, things that are interactive and online. Define the term old media. Well, old media is print and broadcast, things that are old-fashioned because you can't interact with it. These media are linear, which means they're one way. The person makes it, a person watches it. That's it. So define the term new media. Well, new media is in essence OS&P. It's interactive media, things that we engage with. We also help create them as an audience. This means it's non-linear or it's two-way communication. We consume it, but we also create it. So in a moment, when I say go and not before, you're going to write the lesson title and today's date in your notebook, and you're going to give them a nice, neat double underline. Our title here is the bit in red, the theoretical framework. There's no need to write down the numbers and the topic, and there's no need to write down the lesson objective. But do get the title down and the date so you know what work you've managed to complete when it comes to revision. Pause the video now if you need to, and then we'll get started. At this point, if I was in a classroom, I would do something called a prerequisite knowledge check. Basically, do the students in front of me know what they need to be able to access this lesson? So, could you answer these questions? What is the media? What are the 3 formats of media? And what are the 9 forms or types of media that we study on this course? If you need to pause the video again to jot those down, please do so now. So what is the media? Hopefully you got something like a collection of communication platforms and forms, ways we communicate with each other on a big scale. So what are the 3 formats of media? Well, we had those in our opening quiz: print, broadcast, and OS&P, which stands for online, social, and participatory. And then we had what are the 9 forms or types of media that you're going to study on this course? Newspapers, magazines, adverts, radio, TV, music videos, social media, video games, and film. So, on to today's lesson. My students, I know, like to write down a definition as soon as they're presented with it. So here we have a box with key terminology. Before we get into any detailed descriptions or get into any of what we're going to actually be working on, take a moment to go to the back of your book and add this definition to it. Media language, how the media communicates meaning. Pause the video now if you need to and add this definition to the back of your books. Okay. So there are 4 key topics that underpin the entire course. The first topic we're going to explore after this introductory topic will be media language. I'm going to use orange to highlight anything that's to do with media language specifically. So just as I'm using language to communicate with you right now, okay, in the video that's just words and tone of voice, but if I was in a classroom, we'd have body language and hand gestures and all sorts of other ways to communicate. Well, media products communicate using their own set of language techniques, different devices and different rules. Things like lighting and camera work, colour, imagery and design. For example, this is a film poster for a sci-fi science fiction movie, and that is communicated to us as it has stars and space and laser guns, robots and spaceships. So the imagery, or what we call the non-verbal codes, communicate this meaning to us. It also says the word star, and that's known as a verbal code. But you could also look at the lighting. It's very cinematic, dark, with lots of shadows and lots of contrast. And that tells us it's going to be a heavy-hitting or serious film. We have obvious characters here too, like the hero and the villain, the princess and the helpers. So, in your own words, on your mini whiteboard, in as fewer words as you can do, what is media language about? Okay, hopefully you've written down something like how meaning is communicated through things like camera work, colour, lighting, imagery and words. If you were in my classroom, you'd be paired up with another student and we would do something called a turn and talk, where you talk to the person next to you and jot your ideas down on your mini whiteboard. And then we would gather feedback from the entire class. So here, we have a question. How do you know this is a horror film poster? Now, to aid you in your discussion, granted, if you're watching this on your own, you kind of have to do this all by yourself. But here's a few ideas that might get you started. Colour, imagery, words, lighting, camera work. Pause the video now, give yourself just 47 seconds. Now that might seem specific, but in a lesson, we give precise amounts of time so we can move on as quickly and efficiently as possible. So 47 seconds, go. Right, the image of the skull. It's a non-verbal code. It can signify death. Death is a convention or ingredient of horror. You might have said the red colouring, which could signify blood. Again, that's a non-verbal code. Or we might have things like the shadows or what we call the low-key lighting. That's actually a technical code. Or you might have said it's got the word death on it. Again, a verbal code that makes us think of fear and violence and all the things associated with horror films. What you've just done there is a very brief media analysis. You've used media language to talk about the meaning in that poster. Okay, we already have the definition in the back of our books, so we don't need to do that again. But in a moment, when I say go, not before, you're going to write about what we've just explored in the front of your books. You're going to need to write in full sentences and explain what media language is. Like I said, we already have a definition in the back of our books, so this needs to be more of an exploration. Give examples, explain details where you can. Make sure you use a ruler, and especially if you include subheadings. Give yourself about 3 minutes to try and explain what media language is. A good tip here is, imagine a young child walks into your room and says, "What are you doing?" How would you explain this to a 6-year-old? How would you explain this to your parents or your carers who know nothing about the media? How would you explain what media language is to them? 3 minutes. Now, you may need a little bit more support. Hopefully at this stage you can do this on your own. But if you do need some more support, here are some possible sentence stems, some things to get you started, and some key words that you might want to try and include. So like I said, pause the video here and give yourself a few minutes to get this in the front of your books. Again, before we get into the details of this, my students, I know, like to write the definitions down first. So turn to the back of your book with your terminology list and add media representations, the way people, places and events are presented or portrayed in the media. Pause the video here if you need to and add that definition. Right, the next topic after media language will be media representations. I'm going to be highlighting representations in yellow. So where media language gets you thinking about how media products communicate meaning in a general sense, media representations focuses on how people, places, and events are shown. Like if men are always represented to be tough and hardworking, or women are always shown to be sexualized. Or if a newspaper represents America as being a country full of fat, stupid people. The way a war is represented in newspapers to push a political agenda, for example. Media representations is essentially all about stereotyping. It's how people and social groups, such as race, gender, age, class, nationality, how they're portrayed in media products. We will examine how these representations can influence people and attitudes in society. For instance, if women are always being represented negatively, can that promote harmful behaviour in the real world? We will also explore critical issues related to media influence, things like feminism, racism, and other prejudices that the media might promote. By studying media representations, we aim to understand the power of the media in shaping society. Something to remember here as well is that any views expressed in this or any other lesson aren't mine or any individual's ideas. It's just what we see in the media. Okay. In your own words, and as fewer words as possible, on your mini whiteboard, what's media representations about? Okay, hopefully you wrote something like the way people, places, events are shown in the media. You may have also included the word stereotyping, as that's a key anchor point for this topic. Again, if we were in a classroom environment, we'd go to a turn and talk now, and I would have you talk to the person sat next to you and try and consider this question. How does the representation of women differ in these magazines? You might want to think of things like what they look like. So, what are they wearing? Their hair, their makeup. You could think about the content of the magazine. What are the types of stories, the specific words used? And what about the tone or style? Things like the colors, the fonts, the overall feeling or vibe of the product. So, jot your idea down on your mini whiteboard and try and explore how these magazines represent women differently. Give yourself 2 minutes for this. Pause the video if you need to. Now, in the classroom, I would take feedback from various students, but I think it's obvious here that in the Brides magazine, it's very stereotypical. Pink, flowers, hair and makeup, women being married, so lots of links to domestic ideology or beliefs on how women should be, very traditional and again, stereotypical. The Fortune magazine is very different. She's dressed in black, she's in a power stance. We're talking about powerful women, money, business, people who can provide. This is what we call a subversion of the stereotype. It challenges it and goes against it. So, in a moment, when I say go, and not before, you're going to write about what we've just explored in the front of your books. Again, we already have the definition in the back of our books in the terminology list, so we don't need to write the definition again. Give examples, explain details where you can. Again, use a ruler and include subheadings. Give yourself 3 minutes for this and pause the video if you need to. As always, here is a little bit of support just in case you need it. Again, if you would like to pause the video to add this definition to the back of your books, media audiences, the people that consume the media and the potential effect it has on them. So our third topic is going to be media audiences. I'll be highlighting audiences in green. And this begins with basic concepts such as how audiences are grouped, what people respond to, and what people use the media for. As in, most people use it for entertainment. But what about education or even building relationships with other people? We will then delve into theories that attempt to explain whether the media has an effect on people. For example, can playing a violent video game make you more violent? Can newspapers make you believe a different political ideology or belief? We will also explore how different media producers target various audiences and how they try to position or manipulate them. So on your mini whiteboard, as fewer words as possible, what's media audiences about? So hopefully you have things like the people that consume the media, but it's also about the potential effect it has on them. Can the media influence and affect people? As before, this would be a group activity where you would talk to the person next to you. And here I'm simply posing the question for you to think about. And I would love your thoughts and opinions. As this is going on YouTube, please feel free to add those thoughts and opinions to the comments below. Do you think age impacts or makes a difference when it comes to the effect of the media? So think about my 3-year-old daughter. Is she more impressionable than my 75-year-old father? Do you think the type of media matters? Will young kids become more violent if they play video games? Will my dad become more political if he reads the same newspaper forever? What other things might impact the way the media affects us, if it does at all? So jot your ideas and your thoughts down on your mini whiteboards. In the classroom, I would be asking some people to feedback and we'd have a little discussion about this. But again, you can add your thoughts into the comments below. Some common ideas that come up in these discussions are things like, yes, age makes an impact because young people seem to be more impressionable, maybe because they're still learning about the word. But the use of the media is different than someone who's older. Some people think, yes, age matters because children and teenagers use social media more, so they are exposed to the media more frequently. Older audiences tend to watch TV or read newspapers less often. However, some people argue that over time, maybe everyone just ends up the same, and age doesn't really matter. Some people also argue that it's not about age at all. It's about intelligence, it's experience, or how media literate you are. That's how good you are at understanding what the media is doing. So again, in the front of our books, we now need to write down what media audiences is about. Again, we have a definition of this. We don't need to repeat ourselves. Let's give examples, explain the details where you can. And again, use a ruler for your subheadings to make it neat. As always, here is a little bit of support if you need it. You want to spend around 3 minutes on this. So pause the video if you need to. Again, our final definition of today, media industries, the people and companies that create and distribute the media, and the rules they are supposed to follow. Add this definition to the back of your books and pause the video if you need to. Okay, so our final topic will be media industries, and I'll be highlighting that in blue. This is all about the people and companies that create and distribute the media. So you need to learn about how there are different types of media organizations. There are those that are businesses for profit and those that are more of a public service, so something to benefit society and aren't interested in making profits. We need to explore different financial models too, like freemium, where you give the product away for free but make money from in-app purchases or adverts, or premium, where you just charge for the product, like cinema tickets or buying a magazine. We also need to explore the rules and regulations that media producers must follow. For example, should newspapers be allowed to lie or mislead? Or should films have age ratings? Not just because of the potential impact on audiences, but does it make good business sense? Also, what's the point of regulation? If I had a class of 30 students in front of me, I would say, put your hand up if you're over 18. And funnily enough, nobody's hands would go up. And then I would say, hands up if you've seen an 18 rated film or played an 18 rated game. And inevitably, many hands go up. So even there, we can see that regulation has issues. Who is responsible? for the potential effect of the media? Do you think it's the companies that make it? Should they take responsibility for what they produce? Or should companies be allowed to do whatever they want? And it's up to the audience to protect themselves. Either way, there are some great debates to be had in this topic. So, in as fewer words as possible, on your mini whiteboard, what's media industries about? Well, hopefully you've got something like it's the people and companies that create and distribute the media, but it's also about the rules they have to follow, the regulations, things like age ratings. It's the business aspects of media. Any of you who also study business studies, this is basically business studies but for media. Again, here we would do something as a collective, as a class, where I'd try to see if my students have picked up what we've been talking about. In a minute, when I say go, I'm going to reveal some things on the slide, and you need to answer just one question. What is the connection between all of these media products? 30 seconds, go. So, maybe you got the right answer here, but all of these properties or all of these pieces of media are now currently owned by Disney. In fact, Disney actually own and control around 25% of the global market of consumer media. And that's just one company for the 25% of global media consumer media. Maybe you're starting to see that there's potentially issues with few companies controlling a lot of media. That's something we need to get into when we do this topic. So, into the front of our books. What is media industries about? Again, we don't need a definition. We have that. We need an exploration, details, examples. Here are some ideas to help you out. And again, give yourself about 3 minutes for this. Well, that brings us to the end of the lesson. That's an overview of the 4 key topics that underpin the academic content for this qualification. We call it the theoretical framework, and everything you're going to learn from here on out kind of connects to those 4 topics. The rest of the introduction topic is going to cover some more basic things, some historical context, what was going on at certain times in certain societies. We need to learn a little bit about politics. We need to have a little understanding of different generations, things that have happened in the past, things that have happened politically, things that have happened culturally. We need a foundational knowledge before we really get into things. We then need to look at the different types of media. You need to know what newspapers you have to study, or you have to know what adverts you need to look at. And once we finish the introduction, we'll be moving on to these 4 topics. But I wanted you to have a good understanding of them before we get into anything in too much detail. By this point in the lesson, the end, you should be able to easily answer these questions. What is media language about? What is media representations about? And what is media audiences about? And what is media industries about? If you can explain those 4 topics in a simple 1-sentence hit, you've mastered this lesson. Now, it's unlikely, but at this point, in my classroom, I might still have some time left. So here's a question for you to extend your work. Media language sounds like the most exciting topic. To what extent do you agree? Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next lesson.